For those who don't know me, my name is Ariel Leonard, and I, about a few years ago, started a podcast called Dr. Professor Mom. So, obviously, I have a PhD and I'm a professor at The Ohio State University, and I'm also a mom to a 3-year-old boy. And the reason why I started the podcast is I felt like my perspective was very interesting. I'm a military wife, so my spouse doesn't live here. And, academia is its own jungle. And so trying to navigate it in motherhood can be strange at times. And I've learned a lot along the way. And the podcast was really born after a severe bout with postpartum depression and just talking to other women and seeing what they needed and what they felt was missing. And so I started it and it's been going for about 2 years now. You can learn more about it at drprofessormom.com. Before we get started, I also want to shout out an organization that I just became a board member of, Family Flourish. So Family Flourish is a 3-year program that offers rent support, programming on economic and housing stability for families. And graduates of the program increase their income by 58% when the program is over. And so if you're interested in learning more about it, please check it out at familiesflourish.org. You can also donate to the organization. And so while we're here today, it is Black Maternal Mental Health Week, and there is an amazing organization in Ohio, Poem, that does great work in this field. And we just thought it would be a good way to kind of talk about motherhood. And after a very nice conversation he'll introduce later with Tolu, we just really wanted to talk about mothering in the real world. So not this kind of perfect cake of mothering, but how do you really mother and what does it mean in having it all and what are the trade-offs and really defining motherhood on your own terms. So before we get started, I want to introduce a few people. So I'd first like to introduce Tempestt Moyer.
Hi, my name is Tempestt Moyer. I am the Chief of Strategic Growth at a government contracting company, but I am also a mom of two. I have a 3-year-old and I have a 1-year-old. And I also, on the side, have my own podcast as well, Two Moms, Too Much Coffee. And I am a dear friend of Ariel. So I appreciate you having me on your podcast today.
And so next we have Tolu.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tolu Schneider. I'm the manager of the Poem Rise team with Mental Health America of Ohio. And just thank you both for having me on here and just, giving us the space to share about maternal mental health and specifically Black maternal mental health. So, POEM stands for Perinatal Outreach and Encouragement for Moms. And Poem Rise is like a branch of Poem that supports Black moms specifically, just because we recognize that there are gaps in the care for Black moms when it comes to just, talking to doctors, getting therapy, getting linked to resources. And also we recognize that Black moms are more at risk for perinatal mental health complications. So that's why we rise to support our moms and to fill that gap. So what Poem does and Poem Rise, we connect just moms who need that support with whatever it is that they need. So we have a support line, which I will gladly share the number to at some point here. We have a support line that is available for moms to call or text and to directly speak with a fellow mom who's struggling or who has struggled or who has that experience. We also have support groups a couple times a week. We have them virtually and in person. And we have like different support groups for different mothering experiences. And we also are able to send out referrals to counselors as needed. And we have a bunch of other resources as well. Just whatever a mom needs to fill those gaps in, we are there to fill in those gaps. And our mantra, just what we thrive on, is that we are the moms that we serve. So we are in the trenches with you. We know what you need because we need it too. And we're here to deliver it. So that is me. I'll share I have a 6-year-old. His name is Kai. He is amazing and wonderful, but I definitely struggled a lot during my pregnancy and postpartum journey. So I'm just happy to share Poem with all of you. And thank you for having me.
No, thank you. And thank you for partnership. Thank you for everyone that's joined today. As questions come up in the discussion, please feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll address them towards the end. So just to get started today, I think, and I just saw this in recent, there's lot of discussion around having it all. And I personally think the conversation is quite played out because having it all can mean so many different things to different people. And all three of us have very varying different careers, family structures. And so I guess my first question to you all is what does really, for you, what does having it all and who defines that for you?
Yeah, I can go ahead and go first, but I would say having it all has changed dramatically since I have become a mom and then a mom of two. On top of that, it ended up changing even more. I was very, very driven work wise before having kids, where I was like, I'm going to be the CEO of a company. Like,
Mhm.
that's my goal. And then I have my first kid, and I'm recognizing, oh, if I have it all, I might not do well at everything. And so it's for me, it has changed to having it all can really be, my family is happy and healthy. My job is sustainable and I can sleep at night. It really is not much more than that at this point, especially with little kids, 3 and 1. I can't put too much pressure on myself anymore. So to answer your question on who tells me if I have it all or not, I'm gonna go with myself at this point. It is something that I work really hard at to make sure that I don't overwhelm myself because I am prone to do that.
And kind of to follow on what you said, because I know you personally, but like you said, you had this idea of being the CEO of a company. When you had your kids, how was the mental transition for you in saying, okay, I thought that my life would look like this and now it's looking like that? Was that hard for you to accept that it was going to look different? Or were you like, okay, it's going to look different. I'm okay with it and I'm rolling with the punches? Like, how was the mental shift for you?
Yeah, it was hard. It was really hard, and I think the hardest part for me when becoming a mother was not, the crying and the the postpartum part. It really was just the whole lifestyle change that I now focus less on myself and more on my children. And so that for me meant that spending less time thinking about how can I be successful in my career and more time how can my family be happy and healthy was the big a switch for me. And so it was hard, but it ended up being, the right choice for my life right now.
And what about you, Tolu? What is having it all for you now? Especially that you work so much in this space and you see very different types of mothering, right? So like what does it really mean for you? And how do you I think for you, because you work in this space, like how do you bring that to your job when you're helping moms that are transitioning?
Wow, yes. I honestly agree. I agree a lot with what Tempest said. I think at first my idea of having it all was what society told me that it was. Especially I think for us as women, especially as Black women, I think like the idea of having it all is you get to be a mother and a wife and have the home and have your job and do all the things. That was the idea I had. Also was the idea that was shown to me from
Mhm.
my mom, my aunties, and all that. But I think as an adult, I'm realizing that having it all has to do with me. It depends
Right.
on what I consider important. So having it all for me right now is having my mental health intact,
Yeah.
my
Yes.
physical health intact, my son stable and connected to the services that he needs and just like literally, just also being able to function at work. So that's my definition of having it all right now. And I think I realized that your definition of it is the most important. And that's also what I try to share with the moms that I talk to because they also have the similar idea that having it all is like, keeping up with the Joneses. Like
Yeah.
you should be the mom,
Yeah.
you're walking out every day, you have your full-time job, but you're also making a full breakfast for the kids and the husband somehow before you get to work. Then you come home and then you do dinner and then you clean and you cook and somehow you're still just so happy and healthy and everyone at work is so pleased with you because you're doing everything. But I think with the moms I talk to, I'm able to share that that's just a fantasy
Yeah.
and it's okay for some balls to drop.
Mhm.
It's okay if you're not doing everything perfectly. And part of having it all is figuring out what you actually don't need in your equation.
And I think you hit on a valid point of the comparison game, right? I think so. We're all of us are on social media these days, and it you can see people that it looks like they are doing everything. And I've heard people say that to me, and I'm like, what? That morning that you saw me do that, it was a struggle to get out the house with Monsa. He was yelling and screaming, whole mental breakdown before I got to work that day. And so I think we're in this comparison culture too, where we look at people on social media, especially influencers, and we think that they have it all, figured out. And I think that when I think about having it all, I think that it's really just ever evolving. I think this year, my son's this age. And so, there's certain milestones that need to be met. So that's taking more of my energy. But the next year, it may not be that way. So I think for me, it was more of like recognizing that I get to define it, and I think one of the biggest things I wrestled with was my career really matters to me. Like it is not. And I think sometimes people say, "Oh, well, that's that shouldn't be a part of your identity." But why not? I spent so much of my time, obviously, going through school and working really hard. And so I think for me, it was kind of accepting that my career really matters. And I am going to be quite ambitious and overachieving in that. But I'm still going to give my son what he needs to be a great and kind human being. But my career really does matter. And it's very important to me that I do well, right? And that I go after my goals without, I pretty much learned early on that there was no way I was sacrificing that. And so I think for me, the having it all is really I have these goals and I'm going to go after them full force with no stopping. Another thing I want to bring up because I think Tola, you talked about this was family. Did you ever feel like family put pressure on you to kind of change how you thought about motherhood or how you were going to mother your son?
Mm, definitely, definitely. And just to preface, I will just share that I was born and raised in Nigeria. I moved to the USA when I was 12. So my perspective is a little bit
Mm,
different just because of what I saw and how I grew up. So I grew up with a mom who was a doctor. My mom's a doctor. My dad is an engineer. They were extremely
yeah.
busy and occupied when I was a child. But we also, we had the luxury of having,
Mm,
nannies and support. So I didn't necessarily miss that connection because I still had it. I still had that my mom's village to rely on. But I think I always had the idea, especially watching my mom, just the admiration seeing her do
yeah.
all of it, having it all, kind of like we were talking about. I remember saying as a kid, "I want that. I wanna have this, like, high flying career, and I wanna have, someone there at home as well because
Mhm.
I deserve it. It's not just the man that deserves that. I deserve it
Yeah.
too." But when we moved to the USA and when I became an adult, and then obviously when I became a mom, reality hit, and I saw the way that my mom was able to do it was not gonna be the way that I was gonna be able to do it. I
Yeah.
saw that I would have to pick and choose. So, there is, like, a feeling of, inadequacy that I had to get past, seeing how what my mom was able to achieve and feeling like, "Ooh, am I stepping up to the plate?"
Mm,
But I also just had to remember that I'm doing the best that I can with the tools that I have. So yes, there was a big, big influence. And I think I'm always trying to live up to that expectation. But I also have to realize that things are different. It's different here. The support is different here. And I have to make do with what I have. And I can't put too much on my plate if I'm not able to actually fulfill it.
and I think that's valid too, and, like, understanding too that the times are so different than they were decades ago, but also, like you said, culturally, like, I have colleagues in different countries, and it's, like, unheard of to not have, like, a live-in nanny and someone that comes and helps out with cooking and cleaning. In the United States, we wouldn't I could tell you my salary level, I would never be able to afford those things. So it is, but I think you bring up a valid point on how community can help. And one thing I've always admired about you, Tempest, is that you from watching you, you've been able to really build a strong community of support around you. And it would be nice for you just to really talk about like, A, how your family has influenced those decisions, but also kind of how by having this support system that you've created through friends and family, you're able to kind of do the things that you do as a mom.
Yeah, absolutely. So, a little bit about my upbringing. My dad was in the military, so I was a military brat, and I moved around until high school. Like, I was in different places every 2 years. So, in a time where Facebook and Instagram didn't exist. And so, it definitely was you move and you don't even know where your old friends are or where your new friends are coming from. It was a interesting experience for me as a child that I had decided as an adult when I had kids that I'm picking a place and I'm staying there.
Yeah.
And so I have chosen Ohio, regretfully, but I'm here, so it's okay. I'm a Cali girl at heart. But I'm here and I made the decision on purpose that I am gonna choose a place that has a good cost of living, that has some
Mhm.
seasons, that you can fly to the vacation spots if you really want to go, was my thought. And a place that I feel like I can have a fairly good life. And so I chose to stay here after college because I went to Ohio State. And I have been just developing friendships as much as I can through various things. The beautiful thing about motherhood is that we all have something in common.
Mhm.
And so it feels, even though a lot of mothers, when you first get into motherhood, you feel very lonely. Not to speak for everybody, but I'm assuming because I've heard it from a lot of people that you get really lonely in postpartum because you're doing it all alone. One of the people that are watching currently talked about support and how it's not the same in the US as it is in a different
Mhm.
country. And I do think that is very true. We don't offer the same amount of community where we're very individualistic here. And so it's really important for us to lean on each other if we can. And so I've always done my best to be like, hey, I know you have a kid my age. Let's hang out. Let's do motherhood together right now because it's really hard for me. And so that way you just get to know people and then you continue inviting people to do things together, whether it just be at a playground or go on a walk or something. So that way everybody can continue to build communities. And so that's how, at least with my friends, that's how I've been trying to make sure that I um, am the person that reaches out to make sure people feel the love and support in the community especially when I know motherhood's so hard. But I do also have the added benefit of my brother is in town, and then my parents are moving into town soon, where I'll have that community with family as well, where they'll be close, and that'll be incredibly nice too.
I think that's what was really hard for me is that I don't have any family here, and I'm also not really good with asking for help. And you learn early on either learn the easy way or the hard way that you really need help. It requires a lot of support. And I remember just not having any family. As I said before, my husband is stationed somewhere else, and so I remember when Tempest, when you were talking about isolation, I had never in my life felt so isolated and so lonely. And it made the first year of motherhood very difficult, right? Until I had to be like, I got to have some type of support and community. And I have to rely, it's not like I don't know anyone, right? I'm just not asking for help for my own personal, reasons. And it kind of goes back to like, I think a lot of women of color have this superwoman complex. And I think it definitely kind of filters into motherhood when it goes back to I have to be super mom. I should be able to do these things without help. This is a natural thing we've been told that our whole life. And I think one of the things that I learned is that as a mother, I'm also ever evolving, right? And so there are going to be times where I'm not doing this well, right? And that's okay, right? And I think you just kind of have to give yourself grace in those spaces. So I guess my question for you all, we talked a lot about kind of having it all and kind of realizing like these things are going to look different depending on what stage of life I'm in. How did you all, or did you learn to give yourself grace for that evolution, or did you learn it the hard way? Did you learn it the easy way? But what was kind of that process for you in giving yourself grace?
Yeah, I can go ahead and go. I think I'm still giving myself grace. Most certainly, I have always thought, well, I could do it all. It is totally fine. I'm a superwoman. I can stay up all night with the crying baby, and then I will be okay in the morning and work, and it'll totally be fine. And it's not true. I can't do it all. And I think that that is a realization that I'm slowly coming towards. It is been helpful to talk to other people about it. And is also, as you said, Ariel, like it is not easy to ask for help, but having people that are willing to help is already like a nice weight off where you're just like, hey, I just met you. Maybe, we can hang out. And I think that it's something that has helped me be like, okay, well, we could do this together. Maybe I'm not Superwoman today. Maybe you're watching my kid a little more at the park than I can because today I'm just a little tired.
Yeah.
And so I do think that that helps a little bit, but it is hard. I mean, I have always thought of myself very highly that I can do everything. So it
Mhm.
certainly was a mind shift for me.
What about you, Tolu?
Yes, I relate to that so much. I think for me, before I became a mom, I was a teacher and I taught kindergarten and first grade. So in my head, I had it in the bag. What? I can deal with 30 children who are crying, missing their mom, and have never been away from their mom before. I can rally the troops and I can make us have an amazing day and I can even deliver the lesson. Yeah. After having my child, I saw that it was different. I realized that, okay, care of 30 kids in, from 9 to 5 is very different from having your own that you gave birth to. Now you gotta deal with postpartum and all the feelings and family and all that. Yeah, I think it was a big learning curve for me. Like 30 kids in a classroom is actually clear that one child that I heard and that I'm responsible for raising. Yeah, I think it was a big wake-up call for me. It's also why I hesitate to have another child because now see just the pressure. And also I think I felt a lot of guilt just, sharing what you kinda talked about, Tempest. I felt a lot of guilt and still do reaching out to people to ask,
Yeah.
"Hey, can you help out with Kai? I need
Mhm.
help, I'm not okay or I'm sick," or whatever. Or we wanna go on vacation, like we're going to Vegas in August for anniversary. It's just a lot of guilt to ask people as so, I think that was a quick learning curve for me.
And I feel you, Tolu. I have an older brother, and he has 5 kids, and so I've been an aunt since I was 9, and so as an you like you said, you think, "Oh, I have had nieces, I had nephews, like, this is fine, I can change a diaper," and you realize, like, "Oh, I gotta do this 24/7?" I remember thinking to myself, like, "No, who trusted me to leave this hospital with a child? Like, who said I could do this? Like, who said I have it's natural? This cannot be natural." I remember just feeling completely overwhelmed by it was like an out of body experience. Like I was watching myself from afar and how much work it took. Not even just the physical work, the mental work that it took every single day to do it. And I completely underestimated how hard it was. I think that was one of the biggest lessons that I learned is, man, this is hard. Like, this is not, you know, this is a lot. And it never stops, right? It always goes, right? Till you, from the time you put your head on the pillow to the time your feet hit the floor. And so you realize what's the famous picture of the black woman sitting on the side of the bed? I felt like that was me every day for like the first year. And it's hard. And I think too, one of the biggest things for me was such a loss of identity. Like how does who I was like fit into this new picture? I think that was also really difficult for me to accept that there were some parts of my life that were probably going to be put on the back burner and some part and be taken over by other things. So I think that was a hard space too, was just, do I get rid of the old identity? What happens now? Did you guys feel like you were in a 24/7 identity crisis when you had your first kid?
Yes. I don't know about 24/7, but it definitely you'd think being pregnant for 9 months would, like, prep you for, "Okay, now you're a mom," but I didn't feel well prepped for it.
I agree.
Like, Yeah, I'm like, "Okay, now I really am a mom. It does not end." Like, I was talking to my partner the other day, I was, like, sitting at the dinner table, I'm like, We're just gonna do this for 18 more years."
For life. My mom says
Every
this is
day,
for
and
life.
also for life. I do call my parents every day.
Yes, that's right. I told my mom multiple
And
times
I
a
am
day.
yeah, and I am, not young. So it was definitely a shift that I was not necessarily prepared for. But I mean, it's I've been growing, and I think it's a really beautiful thing to have now shifted into, "Okay, I am a mom, but I'm not only a mom." It is, I'm a mom right now, but I could be something different once the
Yeah.
kids are less dependent on me. And then, even after that, I could be becoming something different. I was something different before motherhood, and I can be something different while still in motherhood, but they're older. So, yeah.
And Tola, you said something earlier, and I think you and I had a bit of a discussion on this, is you talked about that you are coming to grips with the fact that you may just be a one-child mom. And I feel very similarly to you in that. And I want to kind of pick your brain a little bit more about how did you come to that realization and how do you feel about that?
It honestly, it is something that the word that keeps coming to mind is grief, actually.
Mm.
I think it's something I'm still grieving and I'm still discussing with my therapist, who I got after I had my son, by the way. I dated therapy before, but
Yes, that's rude.
I didn't get it until after I did this, 'cause I was like, "Okay, now we can't make this someone else's problem."
That's real.
Yeah, I honestly am still grieving it. I have always wanted 2 kids
Mm.
from when I was a kid. I always knew I wanted 2. I wanted a boy and a girl, of course, but what pushed me to this realization was just the reality. Like, I saw how much I struggled, not even just physically, it was mostly a mental thing for me, how much I struggled mentally, how I was hanging on by a thread, and I think the biggest thing was, especially after I gave birth to my son. I gave birth during COVID, by the way.
Oof. Yeah. Sucks. Oh, the world shut
It
down.
was a
I
big
remember
hit.
March 12th. My birthday's March 11th, so I never forget what the day the world shut down.
Okay. Oh my gosh, see? So those of us who were there, like, we get it, we know. And, there was a point I almost had to give birth on my own, like, it was just
Yeah.
impossible. So, I think because of that, I just saw how uncertain everything was. It changed things for me. I realized, like, the world is not going to accommodate me just because I'm pregnant
Yeah.
or just because I have a child. That's when it really hit hard for me. And then afterwards, just dealing with postpartum depression and anxiety and still having to work full time. I was still teaching at that point. I just saw how it was not getting better. My mental health continued to tank. A big thing that I noticed was that my son was not really connecting with me. Like, he was connecting with his dad, my husband. That was his buddy, and I noticed that I was kind of becoming the other parent,
Mm.
and reflecting on it, I saw that it was because I was not okay. Like, I was depressed,
Yeah.
I was anxious, I was stressed. Babies sense these things. They do.
You
They know.
do.
So, my son knew. He knew I wasn't okay, and he was like, "Let
Yeah.
me give her space. Dad is really fine, so I'm gonna hang out with him. I don't know what she's doing,
Yeah.
but let me keep my distance." I think that was the big thing for me. I realized that if I want to bond with my son, if I want to have that loving relationship, like, I have to take care of me. And while realizing that, that's when I realized that I don't know if I can have another one because
Mhm.
I don't know if I can go through it and give my son what he needs.
Mm.
I don't know if I could do that twice.
Yeah.
And I don't want him to be traumatized or
Yeah.
hurt because I wasn't able to fulfill what he needed while creating his sibling, basically. So that was the major decision for me. Also
Mm.
finances, I mean, it's 20,
Mhm.
okay. It's a little now.
Yeah.
This is not The Sims. I can't just create a home and attach it to or like create another room and attach it to my house. We would have to move to be able
Yeah.
to accommodate another child. It was all of these things that just had me pause.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very I had to have the same, like, conversation with myself, and so my reasons are just a tad different. So, yes, I the postpartum period was extremely difficult, but I think for me, I am a pseudo single mom, right? My spouse is in the military and they're not here. And so I essentially do everything on my own. And I just, similar to you, I don't think I had the mental capacity or the physical capacity to add. I couldn't, it would be a disruption, right? To add another child in this environment. And I wouldn't be able to, Monsa, my son is like my little buddy, right? And so I'm still quite, ambitious in my career. I travel a lot. I felt like I was in Europe majority of the summer because of my job. And it's easy with one child. A flight is very expensive. Or, having to fly my mom here to keep him or having to, pay for overnight sitters and it's like the lifestyle that I currently have would not be accommodating to a second child. And I mean, one could call it selfish, but I think for me personally, like as I said before, there are things that really, really matter to me, and they matter more for me than to have a second child. But I do agree with you on the grief side because when I think about my son, I think, oh, well, he wouldn't have that sibling, right? That connection to someone or someone that relates to him, and you feel bad about that, right? That they won't. But then I have to remind myself that my brother has 4 boys and a girl. So he'll be okay in that regard. But it is difficult to come to that decision, especially in society, because so many people, the first question, well, are you gonna have another kid? Are you gonna give him a sibling? And I'm like, no, are you gonna pay for it? Because are you gonna help me? Are you gonna move to Ohio and help me? Because I think it's especially like when people they may have their kid in a two-parent household where, it's equal and people are sharing the responsibilities. And I'm like, I have 100% of the responsibility and there's no way I could do it. But also I agree with you in the sense of when I think about the postpartum phase, I don't feel like I could mentally psych myself up to do it again. I would really, have to think about it, right? In the sense of, do I, want to put myself in that position again, right? I'm very happy with my life right now. And I don't know if I want to add I hate to use the term disruptor, but it would be a disruption to my current programming. But I think for you, Tempest, you do have 2 kids. So kind of how was that decision making for you in doing it again?
I closed my eyes and I did it again. I'm a really big planner. So I have in my entire life, similar to you too, I wanted multiple kids and I wanted 3 of them. I am stopping at 2, I think, but it mostly because I can't afford it. And I also have I had gestational hypertension, postpartum hypertension with the first, the second I had it throughout my entire time, which is high blood pressure, if you guys are unaware. And so it's dangerous for me to get pregnant again. And so it is unfortunate because I have the same grief feeling where, I've always wanted 3 and I don't think I'm going to have 3. And financially, I can't afford 3. Like I can barely afford 2. And I don't know. I don't know how people do it, to be honest.
I don't know either.
Yeah. And so it's a lot of I ended up having 2 and I just kinda, didn't think about it and all the repercussions of having 2. But now, money's tight for a little bit until they get into kindergarten because daycare is 3 grand a month. Yeah.
It's so expensive, and then the other parts to it too, like, you don't know what issues your kid is going to have, like, my son,
Mhm.
as Tempest knows, he's had to wear a helmet that insurance does not pay for. He's in speech therapy, that's, a lot of money every month, so it's like on top of the daycare, there's all these other things that you have to pay for so that they can just learn. So you really have to think I think ABC just did a special and it was like a couple in Boston with 2 kids that was spending 10 grand on daycare a month. And it's like, there's no like Tempest said, I don't even know how these people do it. Like, this is crazy. And so I think too, you have to kind of Tolu's point, you just don't know what you're gonna get and then, how you're going to manage all of that. I think another thing that we kind of talked on too is the emotional labor that goes into being a mother and as we talked about earlier too, that's ever evolving. When you think about your as a mom now, like how much do you feel of the hard part is really the emotional labor?
Yeah, I honestly kind of feel like the exact opposite of Ariel when it comes to a partner. My partner is here and he is a kindergarten teacher, so he's like really good with kids
That's
too.
good.
But I still feel like I do so much of
You
the emotional labor.
you do.
Like it's incredible to have a very present partner and still feel like having resentment of doing most of the work,
Mm,
and it's something that we talk about often because he does want to help, but I don't necessarily know the best ways of carrying the emotional labor and then offering it to somebody else. I
mm,
just don't think it would be emotional labor then at that point. And then saying like, oh, well, you could think of all of these things to do, so I don't have to think of them, is still emotional labor on my part. So I don't know. I don't have a good answer to that besides the fact that I do a lot of the emotional labor and it's hard. And I am curious to hear you guys' thoughts.
Well, I kind of want to touch on that a little bit. So when you think about like you said, and I know your partner and he's great and he's amazing. But when you think about, is it more of do you feel like you naturally take on, because I don't have a good answer for this,
Yeah.
naturally take on the emotional labor, or do you feel like you don't ask for maybe what you need? Or like what is your thought process around that? That's an
Yeah.
interesting thing.
I have learned that I am a little bit difficult to take tasks from.
Mm,
I definitely am I can do it, I can handle it type of person. And so it is probably both, where I don't ask for help because I feel like I can handle it until I can't handle it. And then all of a sudden it's everybody else's problem that I can't handle it. And so that makes it difficult for him, I'm sure. And then on top of that, there is labor that if I am not picking it up and it gets dropped, then I will blame it on myself that it's dropped. And so then I'll just do it instead of asking,
mm,
hey, I know you see X, Y, and Z. Can you handle it? So it's probably a lot of me not particularly asking for it, but just wishing, hoping that he just sees it,
yeah.
and which is not healthy, I'm sure.
But it's kinda like the thing of, like, you see that the trash I think, like, the trash is overflowing, right? So you should take it out, but instead of just piling more trash on top of it, and sometimes I think, no offense to men, but sometimes I think men see the trash pile piling up and they go, "It's okay, this fits too." And so they just add, another piece instead of taking out the trash. But for you,
Mhm.
Tolu, how do you feel about the emotion? Do you feel like you give a lot of emotional labor, or do you feel like it's a healthy balance?
Ooh, I related a lot to what you were saying, Tempest. Because for my husband and I, similarly, he's a wonderful partner. He is an amazing dad. I know that I'm so blessed to have him, and so is my son. But also, I think it comes back to the way that men and women were socialized. I know that for me, especially, I was the oldest daughter in a Nigerian household. So the responsibility was on me, even for my siblings. I have an older brother, but if the chores weren't done at home, it was on
Mm,
me. It was not on him. It was on me because I'm the oldest daughter and I was supposed to have that together. So I think that responsibility just it naturally occurs versus my husband, who
mm,
first of all, he was raised in America. And, he was raised as a boy in America. So he was
yeah,
kind of raised just not having to worry about the extra things that fall along the way. His mom was and is, very capable and was doing all of that. So it was a learning experience for him as well. So I think for me, it's hard to let go. Just like you said, it's hard to
mhm,
say, all right, you are going to take Kai to the dentist today. That is your job, okay?
yeah,
Not on you because I can't do it. I'm busy, I'm stressed, whatever the case is. And holding that trust that,
yeah,
okay, this man loves me and loves our child, and he cares enough that he's going to do it.
yeah,
It's not just about the wanting to do it, it's also about the socialization. Like we were
mhm,
raised to just do it and to just have those things on our radar, set the doctor's appointment, or get the new diapers, "Ooh, he's growing out of these shorts. Let's get more." It's I don't want to say innate, but we were raised to
We
look
are.
for those
Mhm.
things, and the men were kind of not. So while they're growing to meet that responsibility, we're having to grow to like relinquish some of it to them. And it's very, very difficult. So yeah, I think I struggle as well in the
Mhm.
same way. Just I hold a lot of the emotional labor because I'm just scared. Like, if I don't do it, is it going to be done? And is it going to be done the right way? Because if it's not done the right way, I'm going to be mad. And now the whole family is upset. So it's definitely a balancing act, but I think those that are willing to learn are willing to learn. So I'm happy that, my husband is growing and learning with me.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
And I think Tempest brought up a valid point of like resentment, how quickly that can build up. I know for me, it was very difficult to, like, again, I underestimated how difficult motherhood, but I definitely underestimated how difficult single motherhood is. And I will say to the scream from the mountaintops, nobody deserves more than a single mom because that amount of work that you do every day is crazy. It's almost inhumane, to be honest. And I think, too, obviously, I knew I would be a single mom when I had my son, but because I underestimated what Tempest was saying, you started to build up resentment. Well, like they should know, but it's like, well, they couldn't do it even if they wanted to do it, right? They're not physically here, and so that's also like a lot. I'm sure even as you guys discussed and talked about, that's even also like a part of the mental load is having to accept that the partner is going to fall short, right, on certain things. And that I do agree that women, I think, naturally just carry a lot more of the mental load because we've been, as you said, Tolo, we've been taught that from a very young age, right? That we're the responsible ones. And so we're almost out of time. But I want to have some time for questions. I think we have like 7 questions in the chat so far. But I want to end with one question for you guys. Well, I would say 2 questions. So the first question is, what would you tell a new mom? And the second question is, how do you know when you're making the right decisions for your family? Whoever wants to go.
Okay. I think for a new mom, I think one of what I wish people would have told me, um, is it's okay if things are hard, and it is okay to ask for help and likely prep yourself with a therapist ahead of time because I think almost every mom I know is struggling with something. It doesn't need to be a big catastrophic struggle, but it is something. And you may not feel comfortable talking to your community about it, but you could talk to a therapist about it. And I think it's a very, very easy way to just make sure that you're checking in on yourself. I think that that's probably the number one thing I would suggest. Tolu said that, I actually went to Poem Rise and talked to the people on the phone. I had a really traumatic birth with my first, and I needed to talk to somebody. And so it did end up working where it even was like a free option for me. So you don't even have to have like a paid therapist. You can go talk to somebody
Yeah.
that you just need to get some stuff out. So I would probably say that. What was the second question?
How
Sorry,
do you know when you're making the right decisions for your family?
I don't.
So you're just thinking it.
I hope and pray. Mostly, yeah, but most of the time, we're all still learning. It's our first time on this planet, so I give myself a lot of grace to decisions I make, and I talk to a lot of people just to run things
Yeah,
by them.
that's real.
So that
What about you, Tolu? Like, what advice or what would you tell a new mom, and how do you know when you're making the right decisions?
First of all, I'm like, Tempest, I didn't even know. I'm like, okay, you're a polarized mom too. See, it's all world for real. I think you
Lets you
said
know
that.
you're doing the good work, okay? You're doing the
Mhm.
great
That
work.
one, that one. I'm happy that you had that support. I'm happy that
Yeah.
you had Poem to reach out to as well. For new moms, and I will say this because I'm a auntie times two today. My sister-in-law just gave birth to a beautiful baby boy this morning. This is my second nephew, and I'm just super excited about that. So I'm saying it to her. And I'm saying it to everyone as well. Give yourself grace. Give yourself space to recover. There is no handbook. I know that that is a cliche saying, but it is so true. There is no handbook to motherhood. There's no handbook to the child that you have. There's no handbook to recovering from postpartum. Give yourself grace.
Yeah.
And, even though you had your ideas of how it would go, if it doesn't go that way, it's not your fault.
Mm,
It's not you. You're doing your best based on the circumstances that you have. And the second thing I would say to a new mom, this is something that actually my coworker and very good friend of mine, Cass, said to me when my son was going through his autism diagnosis. She said that you are the best mom for your child.
yes.
You are the one that your child needs. You may think that there are moms that are bigger and better
Mhm.
and richer and smarter and whatever, okay? But you are the one that your child needs. That is something that I hold dear. It's something that has kept me like moving along just through all of our challenges. And
Yeah.
it's something that I want other moms to hold on to, that you are the best one for your child. And how do you know you're making the right choice? I'm agree with Tempest. There's no way to know. For for me, I truly feel like it's also about giving yourself grace to make the wrong choice.
Mhm.
You
That's
won't
right. Yep.
know you're making the right choice until you make a couple wrong ones.
Mhm.
And then you realize like, "Ooh, I should not have done that. That was not a great idea." My son was actually not ready to be out of his sleep sack. Now I know
Yeah.
I'm putting back in there the next nap time. But it's about not beating ourselves up
Yep.
for making the wrong choices, because if we don't try everything out, we won't know. So
Yes.
making the right choice by trying out different things and seeing what works for you.
Oh my gosh, I love all of that. That was great advice. So we have a lot of questions in the chat, and feel free as we discuss things to add more questions to the chat. So we have a question, and this is a very good question. From Stephanie. It says, "Do you have older mothers in your circle?"
Yes, I absolutely do. I have mothers. I think my oldest friend, that is a mom who hasn't she's actually an empty nester, but she's 55,
Mm.
and it's actually really fun to talk with her because she is since she's an empty nester, she's now on like like I don't know, she's third or fourth phase of her life, and she's doing bodybuilding and, really with her doing fun things with her partner. And so it's like really beautiful to see um just like what can happen after, your kids are out of the house. And she talks with me about her experiences of the feelings she has now she's empty nester, things that I have, not prepared myself for because I have young kids. To answer your question, yes, definitely I have older friends in my or older moms in my circle. And I had met them through various meetup group, community events, or like um, meetup groups like of things that I that are interest me. Different things like that. Have found a lot of people that I can connect with, and easily enough because we're all moms, so it makes it easy to talk to.
About you, Tolo? Any older moms?
Yes, for sure. We actually have some on our team, on our Poem Rise team. So it's something that we prioritize, especially because we know the stigma about like a geriatric pregnancy, a later age pregnancy. We know the stigma that comes with it. And also just having a little one when you are at a certain phase in your life. So yes, we definitely do. And I would love for anyone who is curious about that to tune into even a couple of our events coming up this week. We have like the Real Tea with the Rise team, where like our team members are talking about their experiences. And we have a few who, gave birth when they were older and are able to share that
Yeah.
experience. Yes. So we have that direct peer support from people who have had that experience.
I love that. I think for me, I feel like I got the best. So they're not older moms, but I had friends that had kids when we were much younger. And so a lot of their kids are adults now. And they were really like good sources of information because they were also in a big learning phase because they had kids young. And I felt like those were the best. Like one of my best friends, has a teenager, she's in college. And so she's always been great to go to for asking questions and kind of picking ideas off of her. I think for me in the older mom range, I felt like older moms were very judgmental at times. And so I never truly felt like I wasn't never really comfortable getting advice because it kind of felt like it was a little bit of shadiness to it, like judgment to it. So I found that the best advice comes from like people that are closer to my age but have older kids because I feel like they're mothering in this world. I was having a conversation with my dad and he was like, "Yeah, daycare is like $400." I was like, "What daycare is 400? What are you talking are you living what are you talking about?" And then when I told him it was triple that, like 4 times, 5 times that price, he was like, "What?" So, I feel like my friends who have older kids, but, are of similar ages, I feel like have been better resources than older moms. In some cases, I feel like they can be a little judgmental. So another point, this is a very good point from Martina. This is when we were talking about asking for help. And she says, another reason it's hard to ask is the fear of rejection. My therapist invited me to consider, have they told you no? And it totally shifted my perspective in asking. And I think that's really an important thing. It's like, have you been told no? Like, and I make it a point to my friends, like, hey, if you need help, tell me. Like, if you need help, especially when they just have had a kid, like, if you need help, because I know it can be hard for women to ask for help. But I think that's a very good point of rejection. So,
I would also sorry, I
no,
just
go
want
ahead.
to briefly talk about that as well because I think it was when I was chatting about it. I do one of the things that helps me too is to understand that through the walks of life I've had with mothers, I have yet to find a mom that doesn't want another friend.
Mhm.
So just keep that in mind. Like, I think every single mom can use, somebody to go walking with them,
Yep.
or to come over and, have a drink or play with their kid or whatever it might be. I have yet to find the opposite where I'm like, I don't want a friend. Don't talk to me. So even though obviously rejection is a thing and I completely validate that.
Yeah.
But I just don't think it's gonna happen as much as you would anticipate as long as it's scheduled well.
This is also a follow-up from Martina. She says, also the asking at times feels like more emotional labor. I've been working on making that work more visible with my husband. Martina, I 100 agree with you. People do not realize that that is an added thing to my plate if I have to keep asking for help. And I think men just because they'll say, well, you didn't ask me. It's like, no, you know that child needs new shoes. No, you see that those shoes are too small. Like, I should not have to ask you to do XYZ, yeah. But how do you guys feel about that? Do you feel like having to ask is also emotional labor?
Um,
Yeah.
yes, definitely. And I'll also just say, like, I remember this experience when I was like very, very freshly newly postpartum. And, shout out to my family in case they're here. No shade to y'all, okay? Y'all y'all were here for me for sure. But I remember a point when I went downstairs to the kitchen, like maybe, oh, I don't know, a couple days after I gave birth. I had a C-section and it was hard for me to go up and down the stairs. So I was stuck upstairs for a minute. I went downstairs and the kitchen was it looked like just an explosion went off in the kitchen. And it stressed me out so bad. I ended up just cleaning up the kitchen. And then I had a major setback. My blood
Yeah.
pressure
Oh, wow.
skyrocketed. Like it wasn't good for me. And my mom was very upset with me. She was like, why would you go down there and do that? And
Yeah.
it's because I needed the kitchen clean. So they were
Mhm.
supporting me in the ways that they thought I needed. So what they thought I needed, they were doing, but what I needed was my house clean. Like I needed
Yes.
my house to be clean. I need to come down to that kitchen and see it clean. So it is emotional labor to ask. But if you ask, I think this is my mindset now. If you gotta ask, you better ask well.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Ask you, I'm gonna give you l- one, okay, 1A, 1B, 1C, 1 contract because this is what I need from you. And so if
Yeah.
you're gonna help me, please help me in the way that I need and not in a way that's gonna stress me out more.
Thank you. And it's about doing what the person asks, because I agree with you. I think people will say to me, after my bout with postpartum, like, "Well, I supported you." And it was like, no, you supported me in the way you thought I needed support, not in the way in which I was asking for support. And I think that's a mind shift that all of us, not just us mothers, but our support systems around us, is that you have to support me in the way in which I feel I receive support. And a lot of the times, it's what you said, Tolu, is actually doing exactly what I asked, right? And that's big support for me. Another question we have this is a great question. How did your partners feel about your thoughts on not wanting more children? So I will say for my husband, I always only wanted one child. And so he initially wanted two, but then when he saw how much work it was, he was like, I think I'm okay with one. So I think two, it's an ever evolving conversation, but you just have to be, I've been very open and honest and very clear about that. I'm doing a lot of the work. And in the event that you wanted another child, they would have to go live with you. Like, I would not be I'm just the reality of the situation, because it's just too much for one person. And so I think, and would never want to have a kid and hand it off to somebody else. So it just wouldn't work for me. And I think you just have to be honest about that. What about you, Tolu?
Yes, honestly, shout out to my husband because I have changed my mind several times over the past few years about if I wanted to have another one or not, and he has always been very accommodating towards it. It's always been my choice, if I want to have another one, we can. If I don't, we don't have to. And I think it's because he recognizes that it's my body. It's my body that's carrying this child. It's my postpartum journey as well. And then afterwards, it's me that's going to be putting in that emotional labor, as we talked about. Not that he isn't doing it too, but the things that he may not naturally think about, I will be stressing about and I will not be able to sleep because of it. So he's always been accommodating to what I need. And even though as of right now, he is very much on board with the fact that we're only having the one, I bet you if I came up to him tomorrow and I said, actually, I want another one, he'd be like, all right, cool. Because he's here for me, understanding that I'm the one carrying the baby. So ultimately, it's got to be up to me.
Yeah. And I think that's too a very important conversation, right? Around respecting your body and respecting your choices as it comes to your body. So I like this comment from John. Hi, John. He says, as a male and husband, we sometimes don't know what is all needed unless it is shared, and it's on the guy to ask the questions. And also, as a mother, it's okay to ask for the support, and it's how we continue to change the narrative on the traditional roles we have as parents. And I love that, because I think John brings up a valid point of these traditional roles. It just doesn't work today. 30, 40 years ago, the world was very different, right? Women were not educated, very few women went to college. So it was just the cost of living was very different, even if you account for inflation. And so you're just parenting was very different than today. As Tempest pointed out, with the cost of daycare and just the cost of housing and living, you really have to have it's important to have two people work, unless one person just makes substantial amount of money. So I think that's a valid point on, like, why we have to get rid of these traditional gender roles. How do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, I think that that's great. I also think that a lot of the men in my life, I've seen them trying to fight those norms, and I think it's really great for the women in my life that I see the men being able to step up and help a lot more, or trying to at least. I do think we still have a long way to go, and from what Tolu said earlier, it is something that's probably pretty ingrained in us. So it might be our kids' generations instead of our generation that really sees that really big shift. But, as long as we continue to raise really, really well, emotionally intelligent boys and girls, I think it'll help. So I
Yes, completely agreed. And just shout out to you, John, as well, just for recognizing that that safe space needs to be created. I think,
Mhm.
for us as moms, yes, we definitely need to ask for that support. But also, I just appreciate that you recognize that the space needs to be safe to be able to ask. asking someone who you're not sure if they're going to be able to do it or
Yeah.
if they're going to react to you negatively if you ask for that support can be difficult. So making sure that the space is safe and that the mom feels safe to ask is so important. So just I appreciate all of the men who are making intentionally making that space.
Yeah. And I think too, like how, I think it's important too, like before you have a kid to kind of have that discussion on, what is their idea of parenting and like what is your idea of parenting and what do they consider? Do they have these expectations on gender roles? And also knowing that you might have this perfect plan, but when the kid gets here, it's overwhelming for both people. Like a few months ago on my podcast, I had a doctor scientist that studies paternal postpartum depression. And a lot of it is that his mindset is that men just really have no clue what to do. And so there's a lot of just, it's not that they don't want to help. It's kind of to John's point that they don't know how to help and they see all these things happening. It's almost like, like, how can I focus my eyes on the actual problem? And so I think too, for men, they have to give themselves grace that it's also happening. It's different for sure, but there's a process that's happening to them as well, and it's okay for them to ask for help, and and build support, a community of dads to support them as well, that it can also be just as isolating for the man as it is for the woman, right? So I think that's just something to think about. So we have a comment from Stephanie. She says, I think this is in reference to me. She says, you are not a single mom, you have a partner. He can provide financial support if necessary. You can discuss thorny issues with him. I was a solo mom who parented alone without support for several years. I did not receive consistent financial support from my children's father. Everything rested on my shoulders. So I want to clarify my comment. My comment said I said I was a pseudo single mom because my husband was in the military. And I also said that single moms deserve the world, right? So I think too, it's important to understand that everyone's situation is varied. Though I do have a husband and he does work, we also take care of two separate households. And so it's not just two incomes taking care of one household, it's really two incomes taking care of two separate households. And so, again, I don't have any family here, so I also don't have any physical and emotional support, right? And so I was technically doing it alone, physically and emotionally. And so just kind of recognizing that motherhood looks very different. But no, I would definitely not say my experience is if you're not getting any financial support, right? Financial stress is a totally different.
So sorry. I just wanted to briefly add on to that because I definitely recognize, Stephanie, what what you're saying. That financial aspect is huge. It's
Right.
reminding me of my mom. My dad worked and he still works and lives in Nigeria. And my mom moved with us to the United States. So she wasn't working, but he was. So, he was bringing in the finances. But my mom did act in a lot of ways as a pseudo single mom, very much similarly to what you said, Dr. Leonard, because, my dad was all the way in Nigeria. He was working.
Right.
And my mom was the one here. She was also helping her kids to assimilate to a new culture, and it was a lot.
Yeah.
It would have been harder if she was financially responsible as well,
Yes.
but I definitely recognize that single motherhood can look different in a lot of different
Yeah.
aspects, and I've heard a lot of people say, like, they're married single mothers, which, I think very much relates in this situation.
For sure. And, just to drop this, NPR has an entire segment on single motherhood. It's a very good segment because they interview women from, those that, from what Stephanie is saying, didn't have any support to people who chose to be single mothers, people who live in kind of these communes of single mothers. It is a very interesting story. So it would to anybody, check it out. So almost done. So John says it's okay to give yourself grace and to normalize it and changing how we talk to ourselves and all the shoulds we all have in life. I appreciate you all opening up and being a light for other moms. Thank you. I know that Tempest will have a lot to say about this and me too. The last question comes from Shay. Did any of you have doulas as a member of your community?
Yes. I, I did have a doula that I used twice. I have thoughts about her specifically. I probably wouldn't use her again. But I can understand why people do have doulas, and I think that it is, if given a really great doula, probably a great experience. But unfortunately, we live in a very capitalistic
Yep.
society, and I think that that is one of the factors that makes it not as loving for me. I'm trying to be very PC of the words I use for her. It changes into more of a transactional experience for me, both times, unfortunately. But I did have a doula, and she was there at both my children's birth, and I am appreciative of that. In my actual like community of friends, I do have doulas in the community. I have part-time doulas in my community as well, and it's always good to see that they're out there trying their best.
Yeah. So Tempest and I had the same doula, and we also share the same experience. I recognize I have a very close line sister that's a doula. When I should have done more research, I always say, but when talking to different friends about how their experience was with their doula, it was completely opposite. So I'm very pro doula, even though I did not have a good experience because I have friends who their doula literally saved their life. And so I 100% think they're important, especially for women of color. It's just somebody advocating for you in a space in which you cannot advocate for yourself. But I didn't have the best experience with the doula. As Tempest said, I felt like it was very transactional, especially given the cost and the reward. It was she wasn't even there for the birth of my child. So I would say, but I do think that doulas are extremely important, especially to the Black community. So 100% pro doula.
Ooh, I am pro doula as well, and I'm speaking from an opposite experience, I guess. I did not have a doula, and I have heard from a lot of my friends and a lot of my coworkers. Some of them are doulas as well. How amazing it has been, and hearing from them made me wish that I had had one. But I'm also hearing both of you. Your experiences remind me not to to equate one to another, but your experiences remind me of people who are afraid of therapy, for instance, because they
Mm.
have a therapist, or are afraid of going to the doctor because they had a bad doctor.
Yeah.
It's truly that your experience is not gonna be the experience for all. So I appreciate you both saying that, this one doula did not work out for us, but that does not mean doulas are not important and
Exactly.
needed for others. Like, if I was ever pregnant again, I would 100% have a doula.
Yeah.
100.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I'd do a midwife. I always say if I could go back, I would have did the midwife route.
Yes. And the reason I had picked the doula I picked, because I wanted to make sure there was another Black woman in the room with me, because never knowing what you're going to get when you
Yeah.
get, when you're going into birth. So that part was really important to me, which is why if I was pregnant again, I would have a doula
Yeah.
again.
I would too. 100%. All right. So we're out of time. Do you guys have any final thoughts, any final advice before we wrap up?
I appreciate you having me on. It's always really nice to tell my story and to be around, this community as well. I love seeing Black women all the time. So thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, and I've just really appreciated the discussion, the comments as well. It just feels like we are all on a similar wavelength. The three of us and also everyone who is listening and has come into the chat. I just appreciate all of your input. I don't think that we can grow in this work, making sure that the perinatal health period is safe and happy for moms and for Black moms. I don't think we can do that if we're not talking about it.
Yeah.
So I just appreciate the openness and even the hard questions and the hard answers.
Yes. Love it. And thank you to everyone. Thank you to you two for coming on, sharing your experiences. And thank you to everyone for joining us today. We know this is middle of the day on a Wednesday, and so it's hard to get away, but we really appreciate you coming and listening and asking questions and giving really good points. And as Tolu said, check out Poem. They're doing so much amazing work this week, but just all of the time, and they're a great organization. And if you want to learn more about what I'm doing, you can check out drprofessormom.com. And we just thank you all. Have a great day.